I'm going to repeat a little bit what we already said,
Oh, okay.
but I want to familiarize everyone with Compass and the role that we're playing. Several years ago, the mayor announced that he wanted to make Cincinnati the most welcoming city in the United States for immigrants. And the Chamber of Commerce took on that mission as well. And there were about 60 different organizations that came together to create a task force and work on the task force, and I believe some of you may have been involved in that task force. And one of the offshoots, one of the products of that task force was the creation of this, Cincinnati Compass. At the time, Compass was seen as kind of a website, if you will, with resources. And we do have a website with a lot of resources. But the website can be somewhat difficult to navigate, and we're working on that to improve it because we do think it's a good resource. But as of a few weeks ago, you know, what has always been the vision is to create like a welcoming center, or to create a welcoming environment. And in order to do that, we needed to bring on staff and create programming to make that happen. And so Brian and I were hired about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I have this
Long time ago.
I also run this firm here with several partners doing other things, but I'm the executive director of Cincinnati Compass, and Brian is the managing director. Brian's background is at Cincinnati State, working with the international population, international students, and he's very, very well connected throughout Greater Cincinnati with the various communities and the various service providers. My background is in politics, but also I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, and then I worked as the country director for Peace Corps more recently in both Swaziland and then Morocco. And like I said earlier, I have a lot of experience in Southern Africa and South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Angola. So I've been around the continent a little bit. So Africa is near and dear to me. But our role here is, I see it is multifaceted. We are taking the mayor's pronouncement to heart to create a very welcoming environment for all of our international community. We want to promote the international community here in Greater Cincinnati. We want to celebrate the accomplishments of people from all over the world who are living now here in Cincinnati, and they call Cincinnati their home. We want to identify the challenges that the international community is facing and determine if those challenges are common. You know, so do the folks from DRC share the same challenges as the folks from Guatemala and the folks from Mauritania? Or are there unique challenges to, you know, the population from DRC that are different than others? If so, we want to support you and try to help you, connect you to the resources that currently exist. And if there are not resources that currently exist, figure out ways to be more supportive. And then we finally want to be advocates. We want to be advocates for the international community here in Greater Cincinnati and reclaim the story. I do not like when Donald Trump controls the story about who our immigrant population is. You know, we're talking about the contributions being made by students, for example. We were just discussing with someone at UC yesterday the decline in international students and what that means to the University of Cincinnati. Well, it's very similar to Miami University and Xavier University and NKU and Cincinnati State, that when you reduce the number of international students, it has a ripple effect throughout our entire community.
Yes.
And it's very harmful, and people need to know that. They need to understand that story, because it's not just about closing our borders and saying, hey, we're not welcoming. That's not traditionally who we are as a country. And we very much appreciate that people from all over the world have built this country and have made this country what it is. And so we want to remind people in Greater Cincinnati of that story. So that's what we have been charged to do. And in the past several weeks, what we have been doing is meeting with every group that we can identify, every group we can think of, which is a tremendous experience for us, because we learn more and more about the international populations that are here. We want to know, where you're living, where you're working, how long various folks have been here, because there are different waves, of immigration that take place over the years.
Yes.
And then talk about some of those challenges that you're facing and how we might cooperate to help. And also, what we noticed is that the international communities aren't necessarily speaking to each other.
Yeah.
So the Congolese may speak to the Senegalese, for example, but that doesn't mean you're speaking to these folks from Bhutan, the 20,000 people from Bhutan that are here. And so there may be some areas where they're more closely linked, but there may be some areas where we're not. And we think that the communication amongst the international populations is very beneficial.
Yes.
So that's where we are. Like I said, we've just started up. We want to work with everyone, and we don't want to step on anyone's toes. We very much appreciate the fact that there's a World Affairs Council or an International Visitor Center, or these various organizations that exist, and we don't pretend to take the place of anyone or to become the big power here in Greater Cincinnati. What we want to do is be the entity that kind of coordinates all of those resources and helps people where we can and connects people. So that's really what our mission is.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to see you again. It has been many years,
nice to meet you.
But we stay connected because we follow you on Facebook. So it's wonderful to be here. Claver Pachi is my name. I'm the president of the Congolese Community, which is really an organization that has been put in place since 2004. But here with me is John Chabola, who is the vice president, Fulgence Kage, who is leading the integration committee, the welcoming committee and integration committee, and Mama Yolande, who is actually leading the economic aspect of subcommittee of Women's Initiative, Congolese Women Initiative here in Cincinnati, and Mama Bibina, who is actually in charge of the media aspect of what we do as a community, and John Otakasongo, who is part of the business and development subcommittee of the community. So those are the folks that you have. But since 2004, when the association was put in place, the Congolese community was not large. I mean, we had close to about maybe 50 families. But today we have close to about 800 families, not more.
800 families.
Yes. Now, if you understand the African family, 4, 5, 6 kids, we're talking about 3,000 plus, 4,000 plus Congolese in the area.
What has contributed to that growth?
Okay. What has contributed to the growth has been the lottery visa. The lottery visa has brought a lot of Congolese to the community, but also the economic aspect of the Cincinnati area is bringing more Congolese from outside other states to Ohio.
Right.
So that has really contributed to the growth that we see. So with that, I think with the new leader,
mentioning the success of people like you, because he's here for a very long time.
No, I don't want to focus on me, but
that's one thing.
What we find is that most of the immigrants that are in Cincinnati are secondary migrants. So they didn't come here from the Congo, for example. They came here from New York. Or they came here from somewhere else. And it's often because there are people that are successful, there are people that are employed. The cost of living is good, the schools are decent, and
that's exactly right. We share our experiences here in Cincinnati. When he came from Massachusetts many years ago, it's because we talked. He said, well, why don't you come to Ohio? So he moved to Ohio. That's indeed true in terms of what's going on with the increase in number for the Congolese community here in this area, without counting Northern Kentucky as well, which has a large Congolese community, including Lexington and Louisville. And Indianapolis and Columbus. So we have a huge Congolese community. But the way we are organizing ourselves is to make sure that we have an integration and welcoming committee. Because what we see folks coming, but we don't have the infrastructure to receive them.
Right.
To then integrate them in the new communities, in the new country that they come and find. How do you integrate them when they come in? So it becomes a responsibility of one and everyone within the community to take responsibility to lodge them for a while until they can find jobs. So it becomes a burden on some of the families that we have. So in essence, what we are trying to do now is through this committee to identify newcomers, to welcome them, and then to see how we can then assist them with paperwork. If they want to get a social security number, how to do that, where to take them. If they drive already, but they want to get a license on how to drive, to take them there so that we can build them up so they can start becoming independent. Now, if they don't have jobs, now what we have done is also to use one of our economic subcommittee to make sure that they can be linked to jobs. So we are working with employers, with Ohio Means Job, to make sure that folks who are coming in don't just sit in somebody's house, but they can be linked to jobs, any jobs. Some of the jobs don't even require you to speak English. Right. So we can link them to those jobs. They have jobs, and then in 2 months they can become independent. So what we're seeing in that area, we're going to continue of the other things that we do, but in terms of the challenges that you talked about, Steve, is that we have a challenge in where to house them when they first come. Okay. So the idea of having like a guest house where they can come, share space for 2 months while they get all this paperwork done and linked to jobs, and then after 2 months they can move in their own apartments and then have new ones to replace them, is a challenge right now. So accessing to housing becomes a challenge. So what we're also doing is to put in place the Business and Development Committee, because some of the Congolese have business ideas. They want to create jobs, and they want to create wealth for themselves and for the community in which they find themselves living. So in that sense, we have a committee in place. They just met, I think on Saturday, you guys met, to look at what are the projects that Congolese already have. Some have already started. Some may have started it informally, but how do we get them to come into the mainstream to make those projects become real businesses and to register with the state of Ohio to become formal, whether LLC or any other types of non-for-profit, to begin creating wealth in the community in which they live. Right. So we have quite a few of those in different areas that we have already identified. Now we are meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. We met with the mayor of Fairfield. Now we're meeting with you. We're going to continue to meet with important folks that we feel are the connectors, can facilitate the process to make sure that folks with ideas can actually create jobs, create employments for themselves, but also for others, and then contribute to the community in which they live right here in Ohio. So we have that going on. We're doing the same thing with women. Women have great ideas in terms of businesses. Some are already in business. She's a lawyer, so she has a law office. All right? So we have others in education. We have daycare. We have others in tailors who can actually make clothes, African clothes. They can make it as a business. We have others with ideas on how to repair cars, how to fix those cars. So they can create something formally to do that, and they have numbers of them. We have others who are really working and trying to see whether or not we can create an employment office where the Congolese can go and they can be linked to jobs. So we have so many ideas, so many folks with so many ideas. We have caterers who can actually cook African foods and Congolese food. And others want to open food stores. So we have a lot of folks with a lot of ideas, and others who are working in the health industry. With the baby boomers becoming too old, and now some people need to help them in the homes, and they're creating those jobs to link folks to CNAs and others to work with the elderly people within the community. So we have a lot of business ideas and folks who are innovative and creative enough to make sure that they want to do that, and they want to create jobs for others, but also serve the community in which they live. So it's becoming a very, very active community. And we have those ideas that we want to put in place. But of course, we have a lot of challenges, as you mentioned. And that's one of the reasons why we want to listen to you, to see what it is that you're doing, and then to see how it is that you can help the Congolese community to grow within the community and to become contributors and grow the tax base of the community in which we live. Sure. So that's the intent of this meeting, to listen and to take notes, but also to share notes to make sure that you understand where we're coming from, we understand the challenges that we face, and certainly I'm going to let the others who want to maybe add to what I said to begin this conversation.
So, what I can add at this point is, in addition to what the Prof just said, there's a big challenge for the newcomer to get to where they gotta look for the job, and once they get the job, you guys know, you gotta go and then come back. Gotta go and come back. The transportation. Right. That's one of the biggest challenges we have.
I'm curious. The SORTA board is here. You know, Queen City Metro is here in this building, and we hear transportation come up time and time again. Have the various international groups met with Metro, with SORTA, to discuss with them the needs, the transportation needs that people have?
The short answer is no.
No.
Okay.
The short answer is no. And the way SORTA is organized is very limited. Folks who live in Fairfield, who live in the suburbs, may not have even access to the buses through SORTA. But those who are within the city of Cincinnati, certainly we have a huge community in Price Hill and in the Cincinnati proper.
There's a big Congolese community in Price Hill.
Yes.
Yes.
Where?
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I want to add up to what the president just said. He mentioned everybody that coming here in Cincinnati, but he forgot a big chunk of people, the immigrant. I mean, for the arrest that is taking place in Congo, we have a lot of people that come here for political reasons. Those are the ones that live in this area,
through the Catholic Social Services.
I can make a comment. We're receiving almost a family every week.
Wow. Okay.
When I'm talking about family, you mentioned that we have a family of 8 kids, 9 kids.
Wow.
At a certain point, I'm telling you, I mean, even housing them becomes
And so you're working with Catholic Social Services?
Yeah, I'm a freelancer with them
to interpret.
as an interpreter. So I'm in contact with them on a daily basis.
So the more established population is living in the northern suburbs and in Fairfield and that area, and the newcomers that are running
in Cincinnati
are in Cincinnati proper in the city, and many of them living in Price Hill.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Anybody in Westwood, Queen City area, or just more Price Hill for the new?
Yeah, Queen City. Queen City doing
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Even in the West End, some of those apartments on Lynn. Lynn, just on the left if you're going west on Lynn. There are folks from the Congo there. In Cincinnati, in Avondale, in Millville, they used to have folks in public housing, so to speak, in Millville. So they are sparse everywhere in the city. So we have quite a number of folks living in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Right.
So what I was saying that about that transportation, most of the company are in Westchester and Fairfield area. We have a lot of business over there that need to hire people.
And Sharon.
So,
Can you give me some examples of employers?
We of companies.
Companies.
Cook food.
Cook food.
Cook food is one.
That's the biggest. Sanmar.
And the latest one, the Japanese one.
AUC.
Takumi and
Pacific.
Yeah, most of these are plants, that need a lot of employees, and they may or may not have to speak English.
What about Amazon?
Amazon,
it's far from where we live.
Right.
Transportation becomes a big issue.
But I heard that they're going to open an office
in
in
Westchester.
in Westchester. between Westchester and Fairfield.
And therefore,
So
we're
they're
going to start talking to them.
Yeah.
Nice.
So Fairfield, Westchester,
Price Hill,
Price Hill,
no, the
Sharonville.
employers,
Sharonville.
Sharonville,
San Mark, Cook Foods, Takumi, Pacific.
Pacific.
And the last one that we talked to, where we're sending people now, what's the name of them?
It's US, I guess.
US food.
Yes,
No,
it's
it's a car
Parts.
company.
Parkland, we were just
Oh,
looking at
oh,
the
okay.
Bhutanese are there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
what's it called?
USU.
Is it US?
USU.
USU, is it USU?
Or is it UC?
Yeah, the new one. Yeah.
UCIS or something like that?
Something, yeah.
Something
like that.
It's
Sharonville.
in Sharonville.
Sharonville. Okay,
Right.
we'll find it.
We're sending people there,
We met with
especially
them.
for the third shift.
So I assume that these employers, if they're hiring the Congolese, they're also hiring the Senegalese.
Yes.
Yes.
They're also okay.
Yes, they are.
It's not just it's not just the company that need the Congolese. No, we went to talk to them to help our people to get job.
Right.
That's our mission.
So
How we can help people to integrate and get job.
right.
And then one of let's finish this transportation then.
I don't mean to jump around.
I start another thing.
Yeah.
So what we do right now is he's going to take care of one of the guys. He's going to take care of so everybody kind of contribute somehow
transport
to
folks.
transportation. And sometimes it's challenging if the job finish like at midnight or after midnight or maybe around 3 a.m. So it's kind of confusing and challenging. The idea we have is if we can get one or two cars,
Like a van that
like
can
a van
transport
that can
folks,
transport.
or they can
We
buddy
can-
up to.
we can hire
yeah.
somebody and he can do that as a job.
I tell you what, there's a business opportunity here
Right.
because we hear this time and time again
Mm-hmm.
for a shuttle service.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yes.
shuttle
Yeah.
service
Yeah.
that can operate at different times of the day.
Yes.
To take people that working in Sharonville and Fairfield,
Yes.
Westchester, and take them from Price Hill, take them from Springfield Township, take them from Coleraine Township, and there's a business opportunity.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
Steve, that's correct.
That
That's
doesn't
it.
have to stop downtown and
Right.
Yeah.
all these other places.
Yeah, and I think you should take note, John. That's a good business opportunity right there that
Yeah,
will be put in
yeah,
place.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I took note, but and I think that's something that we can actually maybe get involved with other communities like the Senegalese, the Ivory Coast folks who are here, the Liberians and others. Make it huge so that when we have a shuttle service like this, can then
Yeah.
cater to all these other folks, to make it a successful business. It is a business idea.
Yeah.
When I worked in refugee resettlement in Nashville, Tennessee, and so this was the same kind of issue with transportation, and that actually was a business that was a shuttle bus, a shuttle company, started off with an LLC, and so they hired one or two people, and that's what they did, drove people to and from work. But then what do you do in between the hours?
Right.
You go grocery shopping, you go and provide, do these
Yes.
other things. So it becomes a variety of other services
Yeah.
as well, and
Yes.
so I think that's a
That's
great
exactly
opportunity.
what we don't have now. It's
Yeah.
those.
That's a challenge right
those,
there. That's the-
minivan or van,
Yeah.
and so we don't know how we're gonna get that to try to solve or to put that business in
It's a business concept.
It's a business
Yeah.
concept, but at the same time, it's gonna help a lot
Right.
our community.
So I think we have to look at it from the short-term standpoint and then the long-term standpoint. What do we do for those who are already here now and we don't have this concept planned out as a business yet? And then in long-term, how do we create a business, Steve, like, shuttle service for the community, not just the Congolese community, but any community, any international community in this area, so they can take advantage of that, so that they don't have not to get jobs, but at least be taken to job and back until they get settled. They buy their own transportation.
It seems to me, though, that the employers
Mhm.
would have an incentive to do this.
Okay.
Because obviously it hurts my company if you can't show up for work because you don't have transportation. And I'm sure this happens from time to time, that people don't show up for work because they don't have transportation.
Yes.
So it would seem to me that the employers especially if they're located in close proximity, would be very interested in supporting this type of concept.
Okay.
And I don't want to jump around because I mean, you want to say, but when we get to the business development and such, I'm curious about the resources you're already accessing, and then see if there's some things, some recommendations that I can make to some additional, whether it's around developing a business plan, getting access to capital for this kind of idea. But I know we don't want to jump around, so but when we get there.
Yeah, backing up because I'm like what the president said, I'm representing the business department. Like I said, to link all the problems we had and to put them together. We kind of thought because we had the last meeting we had as a group, we decided to start a staffing service. The reason why is, in doing so, we're going to be able to know where the jobs is, first of all, and culture-wise, we know who to send where, because we all be living together. We know exactly, in the general, what the need is for people. So starting staffing services, we always start the business plan and everything. But the big problem we had out there, because we kind of a big down there, it's going to be some fun how to jumpstart it. So I don't know. I'm pretty glad when you mentioned that it's going to be advocated to that part. So if you at this point, if you may want to tell us what we can do just to jumpstart staffing service.
Yeah, I think in essence, as Brian said, I think we're going to need those kind of training on how to do startup, how to develop a business plan, how to access capital to begin a business. Those kind of ideas, where are the resources that can do that? I'm thinking about maybe also bringing someone who is familiar with the Kiva, K-I-V-A concept in terms of crowdfunding, you know, so that folks can start looking at ways to get access to capital. Beginning on a limited basis, Kiva funds up to $10,000, you know, to begin with, but you have to have a sponsor to do that, and then they would provide that money for a certain period of time. You can pay back to those who are part of Kiva. So, but that kind of information needs to be shared with the community so they are aware and educated enough to know how to access capital. So those kind of training we're going to need to get to that. And I think that's the same thing that we shared with the mayor of Fairfield, and that he connected us with the Chamber of Commerce of Fairfield to start looking into those areas. So, but you're right. I think we're going to need those kind of what do you call, how do you build capacity, you know, to grow your business? Where do you start in America to start a business that can grow?
And there's several, so you mentioned Kiva, so there is it's a new like crowdfunding institute. It's called Wonder Fund. And so it was started by, with a group of people, but Marvin Abrenica, who was also involved in the early stages of Cincinnati Compass. And he has a variety of services he offers, but one of those crowdfunding. Now, I'm not sure if it's specific to, say, tech startup or what have you, but it'd be worth having a conversation. We met with Carla Boldery with the Hamilton County Development Corporation. Now, it's Hamilton County, but they don't solely work with Hamilton County. They'll go out to Butler, Warren, Claremont, and can provide access to resources there. The Small Business Administration and the Urban League provide free workshops on how to offer business, from developing a business plan to addressing questions around zoning and legal questions if you're opening up a business. For those that are interested in restaurants, there's Finley Kitchen that has a commercial startup kitchen.
What's the name of it?
Finley Kitchen.
Oh, Finley.
You know where Finley Market is?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also there was a new, and I can send this information too.
Okay.
So there's also, we're meeting actually this afternoon with the Center for Great Neighborhoods, and they have a grant from the Kresge Foundation to work with people who have culturally inspired food, is what they're calling it, but for home-based cooks that have an idea. Now, you might be able to make a wonderful empanada or a wonderful jollof, but to be able to turn it into like an actual restaurant, it might not be that great, right? I can make some great chili, but I'm not going to have a business around it. But what they'll do is they'll help you connect. The idea is to help connect home-based cooks to start developing a business plan. So if you know people within the Congolese community that are interested in doing this, and monetizing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Say they're just providing food for
that's
an annual banquet that you have, or for a church gathering, or what have you. They might want to enter into this program, and they reach out to us and say, please connect us with immigrants and refugees in the region. And the idea is that they actually can take some people and provide funding to start a brick and mortar restaurant. Now the issue is that it has to be in West Covington, but that could be there's other resources. But there's other kind of resources.
On the other hand, we know we have Senegalese restaurants here.
Right.
We have Ethiopian restaurants
Right.
here.
Yeah.
We have Bhutanese restaurants here.
Right.
So, no, but so the question is,
Senegalese.
there are these resources, and accessing those resources is great. But we also have our peers
Right.
that have already done this.
Exactly.
And when I talk about the different communities communicating with each other,
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about.
That's exactly right.
That, there are a lot of resources available to us.
Yes.
Both the traditional resources and some of the new innovative stuff that's coming up, but we can also talk to the immigrants that have done this,
Right.
because they will know what the barriers are to immigrants in particular.
Right.
And so I think it's this type of thing where we want to be able to communicate with everyone across the board to make them aware of what's going on elsewhere.
Right.
So right now we're trying to kind of compile a list of business owners, international business owners. All of the chili restaurants around here, they were all started by immigrants.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there are so many immigrant-run restaurants here in Greater Cincinnati that these questions shouldn't be difficult to answer.
That's exactly right. Because I think when you meet with them, then they can share lessons learned.
Absolutely.
What to avoid when you're doing business, and so they have done that. They've gone through that. So maybe for the new immigrants who want to open restaurants, then they can learn from them if they really want to succeed in that field. So I think that's a very good point.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you have, so that's one of the things where I think Compass can be, not as a convener, if we see that their need is small business development, connecting to those, it would be helpful, one, to have a list of those business owners that you know across the board, from whether it's a clothing shop to importing, exporting. So there's actually going to be an event at the Chamber next month around import export to Africa, particularly to Ghana. But it'd be nice to have that list, and so if we want to convene people to do that, that could be a possible program. But the other thing is I'd like to know, is that already happening? With the business owners that you know within the Congolese community, are they already acting as mentors? Are they acting as resources to people?
During our meeting, the meeting we had, this is one of the things we emphasize on. We want to, be able to know who does business, whoever has a business idea, and then we're going to provide some sort of a training. The principal thing we told ourselves is to tell people how to register themselves in the state of Ohio, so they'll be knowledgeable.
So we need a good lawyer to help them with that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we're getting to that.
Yeah, I mean, the list can be developed, Brian, so we can do that. Some community members who own businesses that are already formal businesses, we know them, we know who they are, we can provide you with a list. Those who are doing business informally, we know them as well. We can provide you with that list. So at least you know who is already established, who is doing it, but doing it informally. That can be helped to become formal businesses. So we can develop a list like that. It shouldn't be really a problem.
I think it would be interesting to create like an international business directory.
Right.
Yeah. And even if it's online,
Right.
just to be able to say, okay, these are the folks that are operating in the garment industry, for example.
Right.
To the designers that we know that are
Right.
African designers.
Right.
Just to, again, promote
Right.
the internationally owned businesses that are here.
That's exactly right. And we are not, most of these businesses are not part of the Chamber of Commerce of any kind, not even the African American Chamber. So I think that's one thing. Maybe with a promotion, they may then see interest to network with others and then to maybe become members of these chambers.
Would there be a desire to create an African Chamber of Commerce? You know, I think this idea that
That's a goal.
Well, I just think the idea that the African businesses are pushed toward the African American Chamber. Yeah, why? Because you're black?
Well,
I mean, that's the only commonality.
Yeah.
Culturally.
Yeah, culturally, there's a big difference. It's a gulf of.
Yeah, no, there's a huge gulf.
Yes.
And so, you know, having spent a lot of time, I'm particularly sensitive to this.
Yes.
That, you know, we group, you know, people from Africa with the African American community here, which there's not necessarily a correlation.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
To that point, so, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with the African Professional Network.
Yes.
So we, you know, I was talking
Daniel
to,
Kalubi's part.
right, and talking to Prince and Clara and some others, like, I asked this question a couple of years ago. Is there an interest to create an African Chamber of Commerce? There's a Hispanic chamber, a Chinese chamber, a Euro-American chamber. Why not an African chamber? And the interest is there, but I think would be I think there's a question of capacity. So if the Congolese Association comes and says, we have all these business owners that needs representation, not outside of the USA Regional Chamber, outside of African American Chamber. And I think that would be an interesting proposition.
And it goes back to what Steve was saying in terms of communications. I'm sure the Senegalese community has businesses within it as well. I'm sure the folks from Cameroon have the same thing. So if we can bring all these folks together, there would be a possibility of opening up a African Chamber of Commerce.
Well, and